The Galactic Arena on Station Triumph floated in the neutral zone between 12 different territories, a massive structure of transparent steel and energy shields that could withstand anything short of a direct hit from a dreadnought. Inside its walls, disputes were settled. Some came for glory, others came for credits. A few came because they had no other choice. Ambassador Marcus Chen stood in the observation deck with his 7-year-old daughter Sarah, watching the afternoon matches with mild interest. The arena floor below was a circle of white sand, 200 meters across, surrounded by energy barriers that kept the violence contained and the spectators safe. Today's matches were exhibition bouts, nothing serious, just warriors from different worlds testing themselves against each other in friendly competition. Sarah pressed her small hands against the transparent viewing wall, her eyes wide with fascination. This was her first time at the arena, and everything was new and exciting to her young mind. She had spent the morning asking endless questions about every species she saw, wanting to know where they came from, what they ate, how they spoke. "Daddy, why is that one so big?" she asked, pointing at a Thragonian warrior who stood nearly 4 meters tall, his grey-scaled hide gleaming under the arena lights. "Dragons evolved on a high-gravity world," Marcus explained patiently. He had learned long ago that the best way to satisfy his daughter's curiosity was with simple, honest answers. They needed strong bodies to move around. Makes them excellent wrestlers. Could he beat you? Marcus smiled. In wrestling? Absolutely. I'm just a diplomat, sweetheart. I talk for a living, not fight. But you're strong, Sarah insisted with the absolute certainty that only a child can have about their parent. You carried all our luggage yesterday without even breathing hard. That's different from arena fighting, Marcus said, ruffling her dark hair. These warriors train their whole lives for this. Below them, the current match ended with a Crevathy scout yielding to a Dravenian blade master. The crowd, a mix of thousands of different species filling the seats around the arena, hummed with various forms of approval. Some species clapped, others clicked mandibles. A few produced low-frequency sounds that rattled in Marcus's chest. The arena announcer, a floating AI spear that translated into every known language simultaneously, declared a 30-minute intermission before the next set of matches. Around them, spectators began to move, heading for refreshment stations or simply stretching after sitting through several hours of competition. "Can we go down there?" Sarah asked, bouncing on her toes with excitement. The arena had public viewing areas on the floor level during intermissions, separated from the combat circle by the energy barriers. It was perfectly safe, but also crowded and loud. Then again, Sarah had been remarkably well-behaved all day, sitting still through matches that must have been boring to a child who didn't understand the finer points of combat technique. "All right," he agreed. "But you stay close to me, understand? Hold my hand the whole time." "I promise!" Sarah grabbed his hand immediately, already pulling him toward the exit. They took a lift down 15 levels, emerging into a wide corridor that circled the arena floor. The noise was much louder here, filled with the sounds of hundreds of different species, all talking at once, laughing, arguing, celebrating victories or mourning defeats. Food vendors sold delicacies from 100 worlds, filling the air with a bewildering mix of smells both pleasant and unpleasant. Sarah stared at everything with wide eyes, occasionally squeezing closer to Marcus when a particularly large or unusual alien passed by. A group of Xanthari merchants hurried past, their multiple legs clicking on the floor in rapid rhythm. A pair of Dolan warriors lumbered by, their crystalline forms refracting the light into rainbow patterns. They reached one of the floor-level viewing areas, a semicircular platform that extended toward the combat circle, separated from it by the shimmering energy barrier. From here, they could see the white sand up close, could see the scorch marks and impact craters from the day's battles. Arena workers were currently raking the sand smooth, preparing for the next match. "It's so big," Sarah whispered, awed by the sheer scale of it all. From the upper decks, the arena had seemed impressive but manageable. Down here, the combat circle looked enormous, the ceiling far above lost in the glare of lights. "That's so the really big species have room to fight," Marcus explained. "Some warriors need a lot of space." They stood there for several minutes, watching the preparations. Other spectators filtered in around them, taking advantage of the intermission to get a closer look. Most kept a respectful distance from the humans, offering polite nods when they made eye contact. Humans were still relatively new to galactic society, having only made contact 15 years ago, but they had earned a reputation as fair and reasonable beings. Then the Kralix arrived. Marcus noticed them immediately, as did most of the crowd. Kralix were hard to miss. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, they were covered in thick chitinous armor that ranged from deep red to almost black. Their forearms each ended in wickedly sharp claws, and their elongated heads featured compound eyes and mandibles that could crush steel. They evolved as apex predators on a death world where everything was trying to kill everything else, and it showed in every line of their bodies. This particular group consisted of 5 Kralix warriors, all wearing the marking of Clan Thorax, a prominent fighting family. They moved with the casual arrogance of predators who had never met anything they couldn't kill, their heavy footsteps making the floor vibrate slightly. The lead Kralix, who Marcus assumed was the clan leader, had scars across his faceplate and one broken mandible that had healed at an awkward angle. He wore a weapon harness even here in the viewing area, though the weapons themselves were ceremonial rather than functional. His name, Marcus learned from the quiet whispers around them, was Thraxcor the Undefeated, a champion who had won 73 consecutive arena battles. The Kralix group pushed through the crowd with no regard for anyone else, forcing smaller species to scramble out of their way. Several people muttered complaints but said nothing loud enough to be heard. Clan Thorax had a reputation for being quick to anger and quicker to challenge anyone who offended them. Marcus pulled Sarah slightly behind him. As the Kralix approached their section of the viewing area, he had no desire to get into a confrontation with arena champions, and certainly not with his daughter present. He began to edge toward the exit, planning to take Sarah back to the upper decks where they could watch in peace. Leaving so soon, human? Thraxcor's voice was a series of clicks and hisses, translated by the universal translator everyone wore. The afternoon matches have not yet begun. Marcus paused, keeping his voice neutral and polite. My daughter is getting tired. We thought we'd head back to our seats. Thraxcor's compound eyes focused on Sarah, who peeked out from behind her father's legs. The Kralix champion made a sound that might have been laughter, a youngling. How fragile human offspring are, so small and weak. On my world, such a creature would not survive its first day. Good thing we're not on your world, then, Marcus said evenly, still trying to de-escalate. He knew the Kralix culture valued strength and saw compassion as weakness, but he also knew that engaging with their provocations only led to trouble. Indeed. Thraxcor moved closer, his bulk making Marcus acutely aware of how much larger the alien was. Tell me, human, do your people truly waste resources protecting such weak things? I have heard stories, but I find them difficult to believe. Why preserve that which cannot survive on its own merit? Around them, the crowd had gone quiet, sensing potential conflict. Some species moved away, wanting no part in what might happen. Others moved closer, drawn by the prospect of drama. Marcus felt Sarah's small hand grip the back of his shirt tightly. Different species, different values, Marcus said, keeping his tone diplomatic even as anger began to burn in his chest. We protect our children because they're the future of our species. I'm sure your people have their own ways. We cull the weak, Thraxcor said matter-of-factly. Only the strong survive to breeding age. It is why Kralix are superior warriors. We are bred for strength from the egg. That's one approach, Marcus agreed, still trying to end this conversation and leave. Now if you'll excuse us. Thraxcor moved, fast despite his bulk, stepping directly into Marcus's path. His 4 arms spread wide, blocking any route of escape. I am not finished speaking, human. It is rude to leave before a conversation concludes. Marcus felt the situation spiraling, but kept his voice calm. What do you want? I want to understand. Thraxcor leaned down, bringing his face closer to Sarah's level. The little girl pressed against her father's back, frightened by the massive predator looming over them. What purpose does such a weak creature serve? It cannot fight. It cannot hunt. It requires constant protection. By any logical measure, it is a drain on resources. She's 7 years old, Marcus said, his voice harder now. Of course she can't fight. She's a child. She'll grow and learn. Perhaps. Thraxcor reached out with one claw, the sharp tip pointing directly at Sarah. But perhaps not. Perhaps it will remain weak. Perhaps it will become food for something stronger. That is the nature of the universe, human. The strong consume the weak. It is the only law that matters. Sarah whimpered, trying to make herself smaller behind her father. Marcus felt something cold and dangerous settle in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years, not since his time before becoming a diplomat. "Remove your claw from my daughter's proximity," Marcus said quietly, each word carefully measured. "Now!" Thraxcor's mandibles spread in what might have been amusement. His claw moved closer, now less than a meter from Sarah's face. "Or what human will you challenge me? A soft diplomat against a champion of 73 victories? I would break you without effort. Last warning," Marcus said, his voice dropping even lower. The other Kralix had moved to flank their leader, clearly ready to support him if this escalated to physical confrontation. Around them, the crowd had backed away significantly, forming a clear circle around the brewing conflict. "You humans are amusing," Thraxcor said. "So much emotion over such trivial." He moved his claw forward one final time, the sharp tip now within centimeters of Sarah's face, clearly intending to touch her, to prove his dominance over this weak species and their weaker offspring. He never got the chance to complete the motion. Marcus Chen had been many things before becoming a diplomat. He had been a soldier, serving in Earth's special forces during the last years before first contact. He had been trained in a dozen different combat systems, had survived situations that would have killed lesser men. He had learned to fight not in arenas for glory, but in dark places where the only rule was survival. All of that training, all of those instincts, had been carefully locked away when he chose a different path. He had become a man of words instead of action, a builder of bridges instead of a destroyer of enemies. He had done this consciously, deliberately, because he believed in a better way. But there were lines that could not be crossed, and threatening his child was one of them. Later, when investigators reviewed the security footage, trying to understand exactly what had happened, they would slow the recording down to frame-by-frame analysis. They would measure response times in milliseconds. They would consult with combat experts from a dozen species trying to comprehend the sequence of events. What they would find was this: from the moment Thraxcor's claw came within touching distance of Sarah's face, to the moment Thraxcor the undefeated, champion of 73 victories, hit the arena floor unconscious, exactly 3 seconds elapsed. In the first second, Marcus moved. His right hand shot up, catching Thraxcor's extended arm at the wrist joint. His grip was precise, hitting the weak point where chitin segments met, where the armor was thinnest. At the same instant, his body pivoted, generating torque through his hips and core. In the second, Marcus pulled and twisted, using Thraxcor's own forward momentum against him. The Kralix, caught off balance by the unexpected resistance, stumbled forward. Marcus's left hand came up in a palm strike, hitting Thraxcor's lower mandible with surgical precision, snapping the alien's head back. In the third second, Marcus completed the throw. Thraxcor. He crashed onto his back on the arena floor with a sound like a vehicle collision, his head bouncing off the white sand hard enough to leave an impact crater. Thraxcor did not move. The arena went silent. Marcus stood at the edge of the combat circle, breathing normally, his stance relaxed. Behind him, Sarah peeked out, confused about what had just happened but knowing her father had protected her. Around them, hundreds of spectators from dozens of species stared in shock. The other 4 Kralix warriors stood frozen, their compound eyes fixed on their fallen leader. They had not even had time to react, let alone interfere. The entire incident had happened so fast that their brains were still processing what their eyes had seen. "Touch my daughter again," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying in the stunned silence, "and I won't stop it unconscious." Then he picked up Sarah, turned his back on the fallen champion and his warriors, and walked calmly toward the exit. The crowd parted before him like water, no one wanting to be anywhere near the human who had just done the impossible. Behind him, medical teams rushed into the arena to attend to Thraxcor. Station security was already moving, responding to what their senses registered as a combat incident in a restricted area. But Marcus didn't care about any of that. His daughter was safe. Everything else was just details. As they entered the lift to take them back to the upper levels, Sarah looked up at her father with new eyes. "Daddy, what just happened?" Marcus smiled, the dangerous edge fading from his expression. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just a misunderstanding. Everything's okay now." The lift doors closed, cutting off the view of chaos they left behind. Sarah snuggled against her father's chest, already feeling safe again because she knew her daddy would always protect her. She had no idea that the next 3 seconds had just changed everything, not just for them, but for how the entire galaxy viewed humanity. The news would spread fast. By evening, every species on Station Triumph would know. By tomorrow, it would reach neighboring systems. Within a week, it would be discussed in government chambers across the galaxy. A human, a mere diplomat, had defeated Thraxgor the Undefeated in 3 seconds flat, and he had done it to protect his child. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had known for thousands of years. There is no force in the universe more dangerous than a parent protecting their offspring. Not the fiercest predator, not the mightiest warrior, not even death itself can stand against that primal instinct. The Kralix had learned Rule 3 the hard way. Never threaten a human child. Station security arrived at Marcus's quarters exactly 47 minutes after the incident. He had expected them sooner, which told him something about the confusion his actions had caused. Sarah was in the bedroom watching cartoons on her tablet, blissfully unaware that her father might be facing serious charges for assault on a galactic champion. The security chief was a Voran, a species that resembled an upright walking beetle with bioluminescent patterns across their carapace. Her name was Officer Zixtara, and she carried herself with the careful neutrality of someone who had seen too many diplomatic incidents go wrong. "Ambassador Chen," she began, her translator rendering her clicks into formal standard. "I need to discuss the incident in viewing area 7. "I understand," Marcus said, gesturing to the seating area. "Would you like something to drink? Water? Tea?" Zixtara's antennae twitched in what might have been surprise at the casual offer. "This is not a social visit, Ambassador. I know, but we might be here a while, and I was raised to be hospitable." Marcus poured himself water, noting how his hands were steady. The adrenaline had long since faded, leaving only the calm certainty that he had done exactly what needed to be done. "Very well. Water." Zixtara settled into a chair designed for various body types, her carapace adjusting to the contours. "Ambassador, you are aware that assault charges have been filed against you by Clan Thorax. I assumed they would be. You put one of the most decorated arena champions in the medical bay with a concussion, 3 cracked chitin plates, and what our doctors describe as severe damage to his equilibrium centers. He may never fight in the arena again. He threatened my daughter." Zixtara's bioluminescent patterns flickered through several colors, a sign of internal conflict. The security footage shows him extending a claw in her direction. Yes. However, he did not make contact. His lawyers argue that this was merely a gesture, not an actual threat, and that your response was disproportionate to the situation. Marcus took a sip of water before responding. "Officer Zixtara, let me ask you something. Do your people have children? We lay eggs. The larvae hatch after 3 months. And during those 3 months, what happens if something threatens those eggs?" The security chief's pattern shifted to a deep red. "The hive defends them with lethal force. Any creature that approaches a breeding chamber without permission is killed immediately. Then you understand. I understand the instinct, Ambassador. But this is not your hive, and human law does not apply on Station Triumph. We have protocols for handling threats." "Your protocols would have been too slow," Marcus said flatly. "In the time it took for me to act, a child could be dead." "Maybe not my child specifically, but somewhere. Someone's child. That's not a risk I'm willing to take." "So you took matters into your own hands." "I defended my daughter from a clear and present threat. If that's a crime here, then yes, I'm guilty." Zixtara was quiet for a moment, her patterns cycling through colors that Marcus couldn't interpret. Finally, she said, "There is some debate among station leadership about how to proceed. The Kralix are demanding justice. They claim you violated honor protocols by striking first without issuing a formal challenge." "I don't care about Kralix honor protocols. I care about my daughter's safety." "Yes, we have noticed this about humans." Zixtara stood, preparing to leave. "You should know that this incident has caused quite a stir. Thraxgor has never been defeated. Many species are interested in understanding how a human diplomat accomplished what arena champions could not. It's not complicated. I was trained for combat long before I became a diplomat. I just don't advertise it. Clearly." Zixtara moved toward the door, then paused. "Off the record, Ambassador, I have larvae of my own. If someone had threatened them the way Thraxgor threatened your daughter, I would have done far worse than you did. The Kralix culture confuses cruelty with strength. It is good that someone reminded them of the difference." After she left, Marcus stood at the window, looking out at the vast expanse of space visible from their quarters. Station Triumph orbited a blue giant star, and the light painted everything in shades of azure and white. Somewhere out there was Earth 14 light-years away, a small blue planet that had recently learned it was not alone in the universe. His communication console chimed. Marcus checked the caller ID and smiled slightly. Director Catherine Walsh, his superior at the Diplomatic Corps, was calling. He had been wondering when she would hear about the incident. "Director," he said, accepting the video call. Walsh's face appeared, stern and professional as always, her grey hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Ambassador Chen, I've just received a very interesting report from Station Triumph. Something about you assaulting a decorated Krylix warrior. In my defense, he started it. Marcus." Her tone carried warning, but also a hint of amusement. "I need you to be serious. The Krylix delegation is calling for your removal from your post. They're claiming you're a dangerous individual who cannot be trusted in diplomatic situations." "I see. What's your assessment?" "My assessment is that I sent you to Station Triumph specifically because you can handle difficult situations. However, physically throwing arena champions through the air was not exactly what I had in mind." "He threatened Sarah." Walsh's expression softened slightly. "I know. I've seen the footage. Multiple times, actually. It's already spreading through the diplomatic channels. Do you have any idea what you've done? Protected my child. You've also demonstrated that humans are not to be underestimated. There are 73 species on Station Triumph, Marcus. Before today, most of them saw us as newcomers, diplomatic but physically unimpressive compared to the warrior races. You've changed that perception in 3 seconds. Is that a problem? That depends on how we handle what comes next. The Krylix want satisfaction. They're calling for a formal honor duel." Marcus set down his water glass carefully. "Against who?" "Against you, obviously. They want Thraxcor to face you in the arena properly this time with full combat protocols. They're claiming you achieved victory through deception and surprise, and that in a fair fight the result would be different. Thraxcor can barely stand according to the medical reports. They're proposing his second, a warrior named Drakstar. Apparently, he's even more skilled than his leader, with 97 victories. And if I refuse?" Walsh leaned forward, her expression grave. "Then we face a diplomatic incident that could damage relations with not just the Krylix, but also with the dozen other warrior cultures who see this as a matter of honor. On the other hand, if you accept and lose, it makes humanity look weak. And if you accept and win," she trailed off, "it proves we're not weak. It proves we're potentially dangerous." "Marcus, you need to understand what's at stake here. Humanity has been trying to build trust with the galactic community for 15 years. We've positioned ourselves as mediators, as reasonable beings who prefer talking to fighting. If you step into that arena as a warrior instead of a diplomat, it changes everything." Marcus thought about Sarah, asleep in the next room, innocent and safe because her father had been willing to act. "Director, I appreciate the political complexities, but I'm not going to apologize for protecting my daughter. And I'm not going to be intimidated by threats from species that think might makes right. I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking you to think carefully about your next move. I already have. If the Krylix want a duel, I'll give them one, but on my terms."
"Explain. I'll fight their champion in the arena. Full combat protocols, whatever they want."
"But when I win, and I will win, they need to agree to 2 conditions. First, formal acknowledgement that threatening children of any species is prohibited in neutral zones. Second, mandatory cultural sensitivity training for all Krylix warriors operating on Station Triumph." Walsh was quiet for a long moment. "You're serious?" "Completely. You realize this could go very wrong? If you lose, you'll be injured or possibly killed, and humanity will look foolish for allowing an untrained diplomat to fight a professional warrior." "I'm not untrained, Director. I'm just retired." "Marcus, Catherine." He used her first name, something he rarely did. "I know you're concerned. I know this isn't how we usually handle things, but sometimes talking isn't enough. Sometimes you have to show strength, not just speak about it. The galaxy needs to learn that humans will defend their own, especially their children. If that lesson has to be taught in the arena, so be it." Walsh studied him through the screen, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded. "I'll inform the council. If you're determined to do this, you'll have official backing." "But Marcus, please don't die. I really don't want to train a replacement." After the call ended, Marcus checked on Sarah one more time. She was sound asleep, her small face peaceful in the dim light. He watched her for several minutes, feeling the weight of the decision he had made. The door chimed softly. Marcus checked the security screen and saw Ambassador Takara, the Thragonian who had been friendly since their arrival on the station. He opened the door. "Ambassador Chen," Takara said, his massive grey form filling the doorway. "May I enter?"
Course.
Takara had to duck to fit through the door, his 4-meter height making human quarters cramped. He settled himself on the floor rather than trying to use furniture not designed for his bulk. "I came to discuss the incident." "Everyone wants to discuss the incident." "I imagine so. What you did has become the primary topic of conversation on the station. Opinion is divided. Some species believe you acted appropriately. Others think you overreacted. The Kralix, of course, are furious. And what do you think?" Kara's broad face creased in what might have been a smile. "I think Thraxkor got exactly what he deserved. The Kralix have grown arrogant in recent years. They believe their warrior culture makes them superior to all others. It is good that someone has demonstrated otherwise. I didn't do it to make a political statement. No. You did it to protect your offspring, which makes it more powerful. The galaxy understands strength employed for conquest. What surprises them is strength employed for protection. It is not a concept the warrior races grasp easily." Marcus gestured at the water pitcher. "Would you like something?" "I am fine. I actually came to offer assistance. I understand you have agreed to face Drakstar in the arena." "How did you know that?" "I just made the decision. News travels fast on this station. Drakstar is already preparing, speaking to anyone who will listen about how he will restore Kralix honor." Takara leaned forward, his expression serious. "Marcus, I must warn you. Drakstar is not like Thraxkor. Thraxkor was skilled, but arrogant. Drakstar is skilled and focused. He has studied the recordings of your encounter. He will not make the same mistakes." "I appreciate the warning. I am offering more than warnings. Fragans do not engage in arena combat the way Kralix do, but we understand fighting. I would be honored to serve as your second, to help you prepare." Marcus was touched by the offer. "Takara, you barely know me. Why would you risk your reputation getting involved?" The Thragonian's eyes, deep and intelligent, held his gaze. "Because I have seen how you treat your child. Thragons also value family, though we express it differently than humans. Any being who would defend their offspring so decisively is worthy of respect. Besides," he added with a rumble that might have been laughter, "it will irritate the Kralix, which I find enjoyable." "When you put it that way, how can I refuse?" They spent the next hour discussing the arena rules, the types of combat allowed, and the specific strengths and weaknesses of Kralix physiology. Takara proved to be a wealth of knowledge, having watched hundreds of arena matches over the years. "The key with Kralix," he explained, "is that their armor is nearly impenetrable from the front, but they have weak points at the joints and underbelly. They rely on overwhelming force and intimidation. If you can survive the initial assault, they become frustrated and make mistakes. Thraxkor certainly made mistakes.
Yes, because he underestimated you completely.
Drakstar will not. He will come at you with everything he has from the first moment. You must be ready." After Kara left, Marcus returned to the window, his mind processing everything he had learned. Tomorrow, the challenge would be officially announced. In 3 days, he would step into the arena against one of the most skilled warriors the Kralix had produced. He should have been nervous. Instead, he felt only calm certainty. The galaxy was watching now. Humanity's reputation hung in the balance. But more importantly, every parent in the galaxy, regardless of species, would be watching to see if the principle he had defended would be upheld or crushed. Marcus Chen had been a soldier once, then a diplomat. Tomorrow he would need to be both. And somewhere in the medical bay, Thraxkor the Undefeated was waking up to learn that his clan's honor now rested on the shoulders of his second. Drakstar would have to do what Thraxkor could not. Defeat the human who had done the impossible. The stage was set. The galaxy held its breath. In 3 days, everyone would have their answer. But tonight, Marcus simply stood watch over his sleeping daughter, grateful that she was safe, ready to do whatever was necessary to keep her that way. That was all that really mattered. The arena was packed beyond capacity. Every seat held a spectator, and thousands more watched from viewing screens throughout the station. News feeds had carried the story to neighboring systems, and diplomatic observers from 24 governments had arrived to witness what some were calling the most significant cultural confrontation since humanity joined the galactic community. Marcus stood in the preparation chamber beneath the arena floor, checking his equipment one final time. The rules were simple. Combat would continue until one fighter yielded, was incapacitated, or died. Lethal weapons were prohibited, but everything else was allowed. He wore a light combat suit made of flexible armor, more for mobility than protection, and carried no weapons beyond his own body. Takara sat nearby, his massive form somehow making the small chamber feel even smaller. "How do you feel?" the Thragonian asked. "Ready." Marcus rolled his shoulders, feeling the familiar looseness that came before combat. It had been years since he had fought seriously, but the muscle memory remained, written into his body through countless hours of training. "Sarah wanted me to give you this." Takara held out a small drawing on paper, something Sarah had made that morning. It showed two stick figures, one tall and one small, holding hands under a smiling sun. At the top, in a child's careful handwriting, it said, "I love you, Daddy." Marcus took the drawing, feeling something tight in his chest. Director Walsh had insisted that Sarah remain in their quarters during the fight, watched by security personnel. It was the right decision, but it still hurt knowing his daughter would be worried. "She also said to tell you that you're the strongest daddy in the whole galaxy," Takara added. "Though she specified that you should still be careful because the other fighter looks scary." Marcus smiled despite the tension. "She's not wrong about that," the arena master's voice echoed through the chamber. "Combatants, prepare for entry. Remember what we practiced," Takara said, standing. "Drakstar will try to end this quickly with overwhelming force. Let him tire himself. Use his momentum against him, and watch for the tail strike. Kralix always forget humans notice the tail." "Understood. One more thing." Takara placed a massive hand on Marcus's shoulder, gentle despite its size. "Win or lose, you have already taught the galaxy something important." "But it would be better if you won. I'll do my best." The floor beneath Marcus began to rise, lifting him up through the arena floor on a circular platform. Light flooded in as he emerged into the combat circle, and the roar of the crowd washed over him like a physical force. Tens of thousands of beings from across the galaxy, all focused on him, all waiting to see if humanity would prove strong or weak. Across the arena, Drakstar emerged from the opposite side. He was larger than Thraxkor had been, his chitin armor darker and covered in the scarring that spoke of hundreds of battles. Unlike his clan leader, Drakstar wore no ceremonial decorations, nothing that might interfere with combat efficiency. His forearms flexed, claws extending and retracting, and his compound eyes fixed on Marcus with the intensity of a predator that had already decided its prey was dead. The arena master, the floating AI sphere, positioned itself high above the combat circle where it could observe everything. Its voice boomed across the arena in every known language. "This is a formal honor challenge. Combat will continue until resolution. Are both combatants prepared? The Kralix stand ready." Drakstar's voice clicked through the translator, cold and confident. "This human will learn the cost of dishonor." Marcus said nothing, simply nodding his readiness. Let Drakstar waste breath on speeches. He would save his energy for what mattered. "Then let combat begin." The crowd erupted in noise, a soundstorm of cheers, clicks, roars, and a dozen other forms of excitement. Drakstar moved immediately, charging across the white sand with shocking speed for something so large. His forearms spread wide, claws ready to tear and rend. Marcus held his ground, watching, calculating distances and angles. Drakstar covered the 50 meters between them in seconds, his bulk generating enough momentum to crush bones if he connected. At the last possible moment, Marcus dropped and rolled, Drakstar's claws whistling through the air where he had been standing. The Kralix warrior's momentum carried him forward several more steps before he could stop and turn. Marcus was already back on his feet, circling, forcing Drakstar to reorient. "Running?" Drakstar hissed. "I expected more from the human who defeated Thraxkor." "I'm not running," Marcus said calmly. "I'm observing." Drakstar charged again, this time with more control, his movements precise and practiced. He came in with a high-low combination, two arms sweeping high while the other two struck low, covering multiple attack angles simultaneously. It was a classic Kralix technique, one that had won countless arena battles. Marcus didn't try to dodge this time. Instead, he moved forward into the attack closing distance in a way Drakstar didn't expect. He ducked under the high strikes and jumped over the low ones, his smaller size and flexibility allowing him to thread the needle between the claws. His hand shot out, striking Drakstar's lower left arm at the joint, hitting the nerve cluster Takara had marked on the diagrams. Drakstar's arm spasmed, claws flexing involuntarily. It wasn't a crippling blow, but it proved a point. Marcus could hit him. Kralix's warrior snarled, backing off to reassess. This was not going as he had planned. The recordings had shown the human was fast, but seeing it in person was different. Marcus moved with an economy of motion that spoke of extensive training. No wasted energy, every action purposeful. You are skilled, Drakstar admitted. Perhaps more skilled than Thraxkor gave you credit for. But skill alone will not save you. He attacked again, but this time with patience, using his reach advantage to probe Marcus's defenses rather than committing to full assault. He struck with one or two arms at a time, testing reactions, looking for weaknesses. It was a smarter strategy, one that acknowledged the human as a real threat. Marcus defended, blocking and deflecting rather than attacking, content to let Drakstar work. The Kralix was strong and fast, but every movement cost energy, and that heavy chitin armor, while protective, was also a burden. Time was on Marcus's side if he could be patient enough. They exchanged blows for several minutes, neither gaining significant advantage. The crowd's initial excitement had settled into focused attention, recognizing they were watching two skilled fighters rather than a quick execution. Bets were being adjusted in real time as people reassessed their predictions. Then Drakstar changed tactics. He feinted with his upper arms, drawing Marcus's attention high, then whipped his tail around low, the thick armored appendage meant to sweep the human's legs and send him crashing to the ground. Marcus saw it coming. Kara had warned him about this exact move, the way Kralix used their tails as a fifth weapon when they thought their opponent had forgotten about it. Instead of dodging away, Marcus jumped, letting the tail pass beneath his feet. As he came down, he stomped hard on the tail, pinning it to the sand. Drakstar's eyes widened in surprise. His tail was now trapped, his mobility restricted. He tried to pull it free, but Marcus's positioning was perfect, using his full body weight as leverage. Then Marcus attacked for real. He moved in close, too close for the long claws to be effective, and began striking with focused precision. Not wild haymakers or desperate flailing, but calculated strikes to specific targets, joint clusters, nerve bundles, the thin gaps where chitin plates met. Each strike carried the full power of his body behind it, amplified by perfect technique. Drakstar tried to grab him, tried to use his superior strength to simply crush the smaller opponent, but Marcus flowed like water around the attempts, always moving, always striking, never where the Kralix expected him to be. A hard palm strike to the thorax joint made Drakstar's upper right arm go numb. A knee strike to the lower abdomen joint compromised his balance. An elbow to the side of his head made his vision blur. None of the strikes were individually devastating, but they accumulated, each one adding to the damage, each one making the next strike more effective. Drakstar roared in frustration and pain, finally wrenching his tail free and stumbling backward to create space. He was breathing heavily now, his carapace showing cracks in several places, and one of his eyes had begun to swell shut from repeated strikes. "How?" he gasped, struggling to understand how this could be happening. "You are smaller, weaker. This is not possible." "Strength isn't everything," Marcus said. His breathing also elevated but controlled. "You rely on intimidation and overwhelming power. But when that fails, you have nothing else. I was trained to fight opponents bigger and stronger than me. You were trained to crush those weaker. We are not the same." Drakstar snarled, pride overcoming caution, and charged one final time. He committed everything to this assault, all four arms striking in a complex pattern designed to be impossible to defend against, his full weight and power behind every blow. Marcus waited until the last moment, then demonstrated why human flexibility was an advantage. He dropped into a slide, his smaller frame passing between Drakstar's legs as the Kralix's own momentum carried him forward. As Marcus slid past, he reached up and grabbed the back of Drakstar's lower leg joint. Pulling hard, physics took over. Drakstar, already overextended and off balance, went down hard. His face hit the arena sand with a crash that echoed across the entire space. Before he could recover, Marcus was on him, knee pressed against his spine, arm locked around his throat in a chokehold that didn't require great strength, just proper positioning. "Yield," Marcus said quietly, speaking directly into Drakstar's auditory organ. "You fought well. There's no shame in yielding to a better fighter today." Drakstar struggled, trying to use his greater strength to throw Marcus off, but the hold was perfect, cutting off blood flow to his brain. His struggles grew weaker, consciousness fading. "Yield," Marcus repeated, "or I'll put you to sleep like I did your clan leader." Is that how Kralix's honor prefers to end? For a long moment, silence hung over the arena. Then, barely audible over the crowd noise, Drakstar tapped his claw against the sand 3 times, the signal of submission. Marcus released him immediately, stepping back to give the warriors space. Drakstar lay there for several seconds, gasping for breath, his body trembling with exhaustion and the shock of defeat. The arena master's voice boomed. "Submission registered. Victor, Ambassador Marcus Chen of Earth." The crowd exploded into sound, a mixture of cheers, shock, and animated discussion in 100 languages. Marcus stood in the center of the combat circle, not celebrating, just breathing and watching to make sure Drakstar was all right. The Kralix warrior slowly pushed himself to his feet, swaying slightly. His carapace was cracked in multiple places and his movements spoke of significant pain, but he still had his pride. He turned to face Marcus, his remaining good eye studying the human. "You could have killed me," he said slowly. "At the end, when you had the hold, you could have kept it until I died. Why did you not?" "'Cause that wasn't the point," Marcus said. "I didn't come here to kill you. I came here to prove that threatening children has consequences. You've learned that lesson. We're done." Drakstar was quiet for a moment, processing this. In his world, victory meant dominance, meant humiliation of the defeated. The concept of winning without destroying was foreign. "You are strange, human. But you have earned Kralix's respect today. We recognize strength when we see it, and you have shown true strength." He turned to the crowd, raising his voice. "Let it be known across all territories. The human Marcus Chen has defeated me in fair combat. Clan Thorax acknowledges his terms. Children of all species shall be protected in neutral zones, and Kralix warriors will learn the ways of other cultures." The crowd's noise intensified. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor to tend to Drakstar's injuries, but the Kralix warrior waved most of them away, determined to leave the arena on his own feet despite his condition. As Marcus walked toward the exit platform, Takara was waiting, a broad smile across his massive face. "Exceptional. You fought with the heart of a Thragonian and the skill of a master. I am honored to have assisted you. I couldn't have done it without your help," Marcus said genuinely. "Thank you. Come, there is someone waiting to see you." They rode the lift up to the main level where Director Walsh stood with station security and several other ambassadors, but Marcus's attention was only for the small figure who broke free from a security officer's hand and ran toward him.
Daddy!
Sarah crashed into him, wrapping her arms around his waist and squeezing tight.
You won!
Everyone was watching on the screens and you were so brave and the big scary alien fell down and I knew you would win because you're the best daddy ever. Marcus knelt down, hugging his daughter properly, feeling the adrenaline and tension finally drain away. This was why he had fought. This moment right here, his daughter's safe and happy, unaware of how close she had come to being harmed. "Did you get my picture?" Sarah asked, pulling back to look at his face. "I did. I kept it with me the whole time." "Good. Because you're my hero, Daddy." Marcus smiled, fighting back the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. "You're my hero too, sweetheart." Director Walsh stepped forward once Sarah had returned to her security escort. "Well, Ambassador, you certainly made an impression." The Council is both impressed and concerned. You've proven that humans can stand against the warrior races in physical combat, which changes many diplomatic equations. Is that a bad thing? That depends on what we do next. But regardless, you've made a statement that will echo for years. Every species now knows that humans protect their own, especially their children. That's a powerful reputation to have. Over the following weeks, as news of the fight spread across the galaxy, the impact became clear. Several other species began proposing similar protections for their young in neutral zones. The Kralix, true to Drakstar's word, implemented cultural training programs and became surprisingly vocal advocates for the new rules. Marcus returned to his diplomatic duties, finding that negotiations had become easier in some ways, harder in others. Some species respected the strength he had shown. Others feared it. But none dismissed humanity as weak or naive anymore. Months later, when Marcus and Sarah were preparing to return to Earth for a visit, they received an unexpected package. Inside was a Kralix honor blade, ceremonial but beautiful, with an inscription in Kralix script that translated to the warrior who taught us the difference between strength and cruelty. May your offspring grow strong under your protection. It was signed by both Thraxgor and Draxstar. Sarah looked at the blade with wide eyes. Is that from the scary aliens? Yes, Marcus said, reading the inscription again. But they're not scary anymore. Just different. That's something you'll learn as you grow up in this galaxy. Everyone is different, but most beings can learn and change. Like you taught them? Like we all teach each other, if we give each other the chance. That evening, Marcus stood at the viewport one last time before their departure, Sarah asleep in the next room. He thought about that day in the arena, about the 3 seconds that had changed everything, about the fight that had proven a point he hadn't fully understood until it was over. The galaxy was vast and full of different species with different values. Some prized strength, others intelligence, others cooperation. But across all those differences, there were common threads. The desire to protect loved ones, the ability to learn and grow, the capacity for change. Humanity had joined this galactic community as newcomers, uncertain of their place among species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. They had positioned themselves as diplomats and mediators, hoping to find acceptance through peaceful means. But Marcus had learned something important in that arena. Peaceful didn't mean passive. Diplomatic didn't mean weak. Sometimes, to build lasting peace, you had to be willing to fight for it, not from aggression or desire for dominance, but from the fundamental certainty that some things were worth defending. Children were worth defending. Family was worth defending. The principle that might did not make right was worth defending. The galaxy had learned these things about humanity, and in learning them, they had begun to respect not just human strength, but human values. It had started with 3 seconds of instinctive protection. It had grown into something larger, something that would shape human-alien relations for generations to come. And it had all begun because someone threatened a human child and learned too late that there are some lines that should never be crossed. Marcus smiled at his reflection in the viewport, seeing not just a diplomat or a warrior, but a father. That was the role that mattered most, the one that had driven everything else. Behind him, Sarah stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about spaceships and new friends. Marcus went to check on her, pulling her blanket higher, making sure she was comfortable. Tomorrow they would start the journey home. But tonight they were right where they needed to be, safe, together, and looking forward to whatever came next. The galaxy was watching humanity now, curious about what these strange beings would do, how they would grow, what role they would play in the greater community. Marcus Chen had given them at least one answer. Humans would protect their own. Always. And that was a truth the galaxy would never forget.